Joffrey Baratheon never planned to run. He was the king of the Seven Kingdoms, son of Queen Cersei, and the boy who ordered Ned Stark's execution without a second thought. He was cruel, proud, and above all, untouchable. Or at least, he used to be. But everything changed the night King's Landing caught fire, not with real flames, but with whispers. Whispers of war, betrayal, and dragons rising in the east. Tywin Lannister had died suddenly, poisoned at a feast. Cersei was busy trying to hold the court together, while Jaime had vanished on some secret mission. And in the chaos, the enemies of House Lannister started crawling out like rats. One night, in the dark of his chambers, Joffrey overheard two servants talking. They didn't know he was there. One of them whispered, "They say Robb Stark's army grows stronger by the day. They say he's coming for revenge." Joffrey's heart skipped. Not because of Robb, but because he knew the truth. The war wasn't going well. The North hadn't forgotten what happened to Ned Stark. And now with the Lannisters weakened, things were starting to shift. The bannermen were nervous. Even the King's Guard looked at Joffrey differently, not with respect, but with doubt. And so one night he fled, disguised as a common boy, hair darkened with mud, clothes torn and stained. Joffrey escaped through the city's lower gates with only a stolen horse and a sack of bread. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to leave before someone took his head. For weeks he wandered. He avoided towns, slept in forests, and begged when he had to. The once proud king now walked among the dirt and the flies, barely recognized by anyone. But his pride never left. Even when hungry, even when sick, Joffrey still believed he was above them all. One evening, near the edge of the Neck, he was caught stealing water from a camp. Northern scouts. When they grabbed him, he kicked and screamed, calling them names, ordering them to unhand him. One of the men punched him in the stomach so hard he fell to his knees. But then they saw his face, beneath the mud, the sharp blue eyes and twisted smirk. One of the soldiers leaned in and said, "I've seen that face on wanted posters." Joffrey was dragged, tied like an animal, to Robb Stark's camp. When Robb saw him, he couldn't believe it. They threw Joffrey in front of him like a sack of garbage. His golden hair was gone, his body thin and bruised. But Robb recognized him instantly. The boy who killed his father. The false king who had mocked the North. Robb stared down at him, fists clenched, rage burning in his chest. "You," Robb said coldly. Joffrey raised his chin. "I am your king," he muttered, though his voice cracked with fear. Robb laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. "You're nothing here," he said. "And now you're my prisoner." The camp fell silent. The king in the north had captured the king on the Iron Throne, and the game had changed. The cold wind of the north bit into Joffrey's skin as he sat tied to a wooden post in the middle of Robb Stark's camp. He had never felt such humiliation before. No golden throne, no servants, no crown. Just dirt under his fingernails, and the laughter of northern soldiers echoing around him. They called him names. King Coward, Boy Lord. One even tossed a rotten apple at him. It hit his shoulder, but Joffrey said nothing. His pride burned inside, but fear held his tongue still. Robb Stark hadn't said much after ordering him locked up. The young wolf had gone quiet, sitting in his tent, staring at the fire. His bannermen argued outside. "Kill him now," Great Janumber growled. "The North demands justice." "He's worth more alive," said Roose Bolton calmly, eyes sharp and cold. "He's a Lannister bargaining chip." But Robb just listened, quiet, focused. He wasn't the same boy who rode south with his father. War had changed him. He had seen too much blood, lost too many friends. And now, the man who ordered his father's death sat shackled just a few feet away. Robb finally stood and walked out to face Joffrey again. "You know what you've done," Robb said flatly. Joffrey, sitting in the mud, didn't answer. His lip was busted, his face red from the cold. "You killed my father," Robb continued, voice tight. "Had his head chopped off while my sisters watched. And you wore that crown like it meant something." Joffrey looked up, bitter. "I am king," he muttered. "I had every right." "Your father was a traitor." Robb didn't flinch. "Is that what your mother told you?" Joffrey stayed quiet. Robb walked closer. You ran because you knew the truth. The kingdom's falling apart. No one wants you on that throne. Joffrey's jaw tightened. They'll come for me. My mother, my men. Your mother's too busy clinging to power, Robb snapped. And your men? They're fighting for gold, not for you. A long silence stretched between them. Robb turned to his men. Get him up. Bring him to my tent. Joffrey was dragged through the mud and tossed onto a fur-covered bench. Robb sat across from him, poured 2 cups of wine, and slid one across the table. Joffrey stared at it suspiciously. You think I'll drink that? Robb shrugged. Then stay thirsty. They sat in silence again. Fire crackled between them. Robb studied Joffrey not with hatred, but with something colder, curiosity, like he was trying to figure out what kind of creature sat before him. You're not brave, Robb said finally. You play king, but when things got hard, you ran. Real kings don't run. Joffrey flared up. You don't know what it's like to rule, to have people lie to your face every day, to be hated for doing what's right. You think cutting off my father's head was right? Joffrey went quiet again. Robb leaned forward. You're going to stay in this camp, as my prisoner, not in chains, but watched closely. If you try to run, I'll let the dogs hunt you. Joffrey scoffed. So what? You'll trade me back to my mother like a coward? Robb smiled, but it wasn't warm. You're not going back. Not yet, maybe not ever. You're going to watch how the North does things, how real leaders act. And maybe, if there's any soul left in that royal body of yours, you'll learn something. The next few days were worse than anything Joffrey could imagine. No silk sheets, no warm baths. Just cold mornings, hard bread, and the sound of swords clashing. He wasn't allowed near weapons. Soldiers spit near his feet when they walked past. Some of them told him stories about the red wedding rumors, about how the South laughed at Robb, how winter was coming faster than expected. Joffrey didn't sleep much. At night he thought of his mother, of the throne, of the blood on his hands. His dreams were full of screams. Sometimes he saw Ned Stark's face, calm, even in death. One afternoon, Arya Stark rode into the camp. She looked older now, fiercer. When she saw Joffrey, she jumped down from her horse, marched straight to him, and punched him across the face. That's for my father, she said. Joffrey fell backward in the dirt. Nose bleeding, groaning. Robb didn't stop her. No one did. That was the day Joffrey realized. In the North, no crown could save you. Not from justice, not from the truth, not from the Starks. The next morning, Joffrey sat alone near the edge of the camp, wrapped in a ragged blanket that barely held off the northern chill. His nose still ached from Arya's punch, and his pride felt more shattered than his face. He watched the soldiers march, train, laugh, eat, and work together like a proper army. Not like the spoiled knights back in King's Landing, who only knew how to drink and show off. He hated it here. Hated the cold. Hated the discipline. Hated how no one feared him anymore. But what stung the most was the silence. In King's Landing, people lied to his face, but they still bowed. Here no one even looked twice. Later that day, Robb Stark called him again. This time the king in the north wasn't alone. Lady Catelyn sat beside him, her eyes sharp and filled with the pain of a mother who'd lost too much. Arya leaned against a wooden pillar, arms crossed, watching Joffrey like she was imagining a dozen ways to kill him. Robb didn't smile. He never did when Joffrey was around. We're heading to the Twins, Robb said. Lord Frey has summoned me. I'm taking half my men. You'll stay here under watch. Joffrey looked up, surprised. You trust your men to guard me? I trust them more than I trust you, Robb replied coldly. Lady Catelyn leaned forward. You should have died the moment you arrived, she said, her voice calm but deadly. And truthfully, I'm still not sure why my son kept you alive. Joffrey blinked. Because I'm worth something. You need me. Arya let out a sharp laugh. No one needs you. Catelyn raised a hand to silence her, then locked eyes with Joffrey. You killed my husband, lied about him, destroyed my family, and yet you sit here breathing while my daughters grew up in fear. Tell me, Joffrey, does that feel like justice to you? Joffrey didn't answer. Catelyn turned away. Let him rot. That night something strange happened. One of the younger northern soldiers brought Joffrey a bowl of hot stew. He didn't say anything, just placed it down and left. For a moment, Joffrey stared at the bowl like it was poisoned. But hunger always wins. As he ate, he watched the camp. Men sharpening swords, others writing letters. A group playing dice near the fire, laughing under the stars. For the first time in his life, Joffrey felt small, not hated, not feared, just forgotten. And nobody. The next morning, Robb's army marched. Joffrey stood near the gate, flanked by guards. Arya didn't even look at him as she rode past, but the night didn't stay quiet. It was just past midnight when a horn blew. Shouting rose near the woods. Joffrey sat up, heart racing. The guards at his tent rushed out. Torches lit up the sky. Horses screamed in the distance. An attack. Joffrey crawled to the edge of the tent and peeked outside. A group of bandits, or maybe Lannister deserters, were storming the outer line. The Stark soldiers fought back hard, but chaos had already started. Fire broke out near the supply carts. Screams echoed in the air. One of the guards ran back toward the tent and yelled, "Secure the prisoner!" But before he could step inside, an arrow struck him in the neck. He fell to the ground, twitching. Joffrey froze. Another man ran through the flames toward the tent, tall, wrapped in a dark cloak. He kicked open the flap and stared at Joffrey. "Your Grace," the man said mockingly. "Time to go." Joffrey didn't recognize him, but he saw the Lannister sigil on the man's belt. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Someone sent by your mother," the man said. "Now move before I drag you by the throat." For a second, Joffrey almost obeyed, but something stopped him. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the memory of Arya's fist, or Robb's cold eyes. "I'm not going," Joffrey said slowly. The man blinked. "What?" "I said I'm not going," he repeated, louder this time. "You think she sent you to save me, but she didn't. She sent you because she's afraid of what I'll say. She doesn't care. None of them do." The man cursed and grabbed his arm. But before he could drag him out, 2 Northern soldiers charged in and tackled him. Steel clashed. One of the Northerners fell, but the other drove a blade through the cloaked man's side. Blood poured from his mouth as he collapsed. Joffrey stared at the body. He wasn't angry. He wasn't scared. He was empty. The guard stood panting and looked at Joffrey. "You all right?" Joffrey nodded, barely. That was the moment something inside him cracked. Maybe it was the last piece of the Boy King dying. Or maybe, for the first time in his life, he felt what it meant to be powerless, and he didn't hate it. Not yet, but soon. The camp smelled like smoke for days. Robb's men had pushed back the surprise attack, but the damage was done. Tents burned, supplies destroyed, and 5 good men dead. Joffrey had watched it all from the shadows, curled up like a stray dog. No crown, no armor, no swords. Just smoke in his lungs and fear in his bones. He hadn't told anyone about the Lannister man who came to take him. He didn't need to. The dead man's belt had the lion's sigil. The Northerners weren't fools, but what surprised everyone was what Joffrey did next. He didn't try to escape. He didn't scream about being king. He didn't demand a new tent or food. He just stayed quiet, sat by the fire, ate with the soldiers. He even helped one of the wounded men wrap his arm. Fumbling with the cloth like a lost child, whispers began to spread. "The lion's gone soft," someone muttered near the horses. "Maybe he's planning something," another said, but others weren't so sure. Some had seen the look on Joffrey's face during the attack. Not panic, not pride, just confusion, like a boy who'd looked in a mirror and didn't recognize what stared back. Robb Stark returned a week later, tired, bloodied, and furious. The phrase had insulted him again. Promised support, then backed out at the last moment. He'd wasted time and men riding there. And now his camp had been attacked in his absence. He walked straight to Joffrey's tent, ready to drag him out by the collar. But when he entered, what he saw made him stop cold. Joffrey sat alone near the fire, reading a torn book, his hair grown out and tangled, his royal face no longer proud, just blank. A small bowl of stew sat half-eaten at his side. "You still breathing?" Robb said coldly. Joffrey looked up. "Barely." Robb stepped closer. "Someone tried to take you." "I know. You didn't run." "I thought about it," Joffrey admitted. "But I didn't." Robb studied him. "Why not?" Joffrey hesitated. "Because I didn't want to go back." That answer wasn't what Robb expected. He crossed his arms. You expect me to believe that? No, Joffrey said quietly. But it's true. Robb pulled over a stool and sat across from him, firelight dancing between them. You hated it here. I still do, Joffrey said. But at least here people are honest when they hate me. That made Robb pause. What happened to you? He asked. You were the most arrogant brat in the realm. Joffrey smirked weakly. You think I chose to be like that? My mother shaped me like a weapon. My grandfather used me like a banner. No one ever taught me how to be good, only how to be feared. Robb looked at him long and hard. This didn't feel like a trick. Not like the Joffrey who mocked Sansa or ordered executions for fun. This boy, no, this broken prince, looked like someone who had finally been crushed by the weight of his own crown. Joffrey leaned back. Do you ever wonder how it might have been if our fathers had stayed friends? If I'd been raised in Winterfell and you in King's Landing? Robb's jaw tightened. You'd have been a better man. And I would have been a worse king. A heavy silence hung between them. Then Joffrey asked something no one expected. Let me stay. Robb frowned. Stay in the north, in your army, as a prisoner or a squire or... I don't care. Just not back there. Not to her. Not to the lies. Robb stood, walking away a few steps. Do you think it's that easy? He said. You killed my father. Joffrey stood too, shakily. I didn't swing the sword. You gave the order. I didn't understand what I was doing. Joffrey snapped, voice cracking. I was a boy playing a game I didn't know the rules of. Everyone wanted blood, so I gave it to them. And I hate myself for it. Robb turned, surprised by the edge in his voice. I dream of his face, Joffrey said. Ned Stark, calm even as he died, like he knew something I didn't. Robb stared at him for a long moment, then finally said, Go back to your tent. You'll have your answer tomorrow. That night, Robb sat in his own tent, staring at a map of Westeros. But it wasn't borders or battles he thought about. It was what kind of king lets his enemy beg to stay, and what kind of man Joffrey Baratheon was becoming, or pretending to be. The next morning was colder than usual. Frost clung to the tents, and the breath of every soldier hung in the air like smoke. Joffrey awoke shivering, wrapped in a borrowed wool blanket that smelled like horse sweat. His stomach was twisted in knots, not from hunger, but from waiting. Would Robb send him back to King's Landing? Trade him? Execute him? He didn't know which answer scared him more. The guards outside his tent didn't speak to him. They never did. But just after sunrise, one of them stepped inside and said simply, He wants to see you. Joffrey followed without speaking. Head down, hands still bound, not with iron shackles anymore, but with leather cord, tight enough to remind him he wasn't free. Robb was standing at the edge of the camp, facing the forest. Snowflakes drifted slowly from the grey sky. When Joffrey arrived, Robb didn't turn around. He just said, How far are you willing to go? Joffrey frowned. What do you mean? Robb turned then, face unreadable. You want to stay in the north? You want to live among the people whose lives your family destroyed? Then you'll earn it. You'll start at the bottom. No titles, no name. You'll carry water, clean horses, patch tents, and eat after the dogs if you're lucky. Joffrey opened his mouth to argue, but closed it quickly. I'm serious, Robb said. The moment you act like a king again, I'll throw you in a cage. Joffrey nodded. Fine, Robb narrowed his eyes. You'll be given a fake name. No one outside this camp will know who you are. You won't speak of your past, not to anyone. And if anyone finds out you're Joffrey Baratheon, you'll be treated like a spy and executed. No questions, no mercy. Joffrey's throat went dry. Understood. You'll report to the blacksmith, Robb said. He's got a bad temper and he hates southern lords. He'll make your life hell and you'll thank him for it. Joffrey gave a weak smile. Sounds fair. Robb stepped closer. I don't forgive you. My mother doesn't forgive you. Arya wants to cut your throat in your sleep. And the men? Half of them would slit your belly open for fun. I know, Joffrey said quietly. Then why do this? Joffrey hesitated, then looked Robb dead in the eye. Because I don't know who I am anymore. Robb stared at him for a moment, then gave a single nod. Your new name is John Rivers. Get to work. The days that followed broke whatever pride Joffrey still had left. He scrubbed horse dung off boots, hauled firewood, burned his fingers on hot iron while helping the blacksmith. His soft southern hands bled and blistered. His back ached. He slept near the camp pigs, under a tarp that leaked when it rained, and no one showed him kindness. Men cursed at him, threw buckets at his feet, shoved him when he slowed down. One soldier spat in his stew and dared him to eat it. Joffrey did, without a word. At night he lay in the straw and stared at the stars. Once those stars had looked like his future, full of glory, power, and legacy. Now they were just cold lights in a dark sky. One evening, Arya appeared. She didn't say a word, just stood near him while he shoveled manure outside the stables. "I should kill you," she said softly. Joffrey didn't stop working. "Then do it," she waited, watching him, studying the sunken eyes, the dirt under his nails, the way he no longer stood tall. "You're not the same," she finally said. Joffrey looked up at her, exhausted. "No one is, Arya, not anymore." She didn't respond. Just walked away into the snow. Weeks passed. Then months. John Rivers became a familiar figure in the camp. The quiet boy who never complained, who worked harder than most, who never raised his voice. But the men still didn't trust him. Not fully, and how could they? He was a Lannister by blood, a Baratheon by name, and a monster by memory. One night an injured scout stumbled into camp, bleeding, half-conscious. "The Bolton men," he gasped. "They're coming, with numbers." 20 miles south, the camp was thrown into chaos. Robb gathered his commanders. They needed scouts, riders, runners, and then to everyone's shock, Joffrey stepped forward. "I'll ride," he said. Every eye turned on him. Some laughed. Others swore. But Robb said nothing, just studied his face. "You're not trained," one officer barked. "I can ride. I know the roads better than most. And if I die, who cares, right?" Robb's expression didn't change. But deep in his eyes, something shifted. Maybe disbelief, maybe the first flicker of trust, or maybe just the curiosity of a wolf watching a lion shed its mane. The saddle creaked beneath. Joffrey, as he rode through the frozen trees, breath sharp in his chest, fingers numb from the cold. Snow fell harder now, thick and fast, blinding him in bursts. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. He was alone, a torch strapped to his back, a small dagger at his belt, and a worn-out map folded into his coat. No crown, no guards. Just a former king, now a nameless rider on a suicide mission. Robb had hesitated before allowing it. Sending Joffrey to scout the Bolton raiding party was a gamble, and everyone knew it. But when no one else stepped up, Joffrey's voice had cut through the silence like steel. "If I fail, you lose nothing. If I succeed, maybe I'm worth something." And Robb had finally nodded. "Ride north. Bring back word before dusk." Now, hours into the snowstorm, Joffrey realized just how insane the task was. The woods were silent, except for the wind. Every snap of a twig made him flinch. The road was narrow, barely more than a path between dead trees. Somewhere in these woods the Boltons marched. Cruel men with flayed man banners and no mercy in their hearts. And if they found him, they wouldn't ask questions. Suddenly Joffrey pulled the reins, hoofprints, fresh ones, dozens. He slid off his horse, crouched, and pressed a hand to the ground. Warm, recent, he was close. Too close. He could hear them now. Faint voices through the trees, metal clinking, the sound of a cartwheel crunching ice. Bolton soldiers. Joffrey's heart pounded. He crouched behind a thick tree, trying to steady his breath. The enemy was just ahead. If he got caught, they'd strip him bare and skin him alive. Lannister or not, but he forced himself to crawl forward. He needed numbers, direction, weapons. He needed to see something worth risking his neck for. Through the trees, he spotted them, maybe 200 men. Marching slowly, torches lit, dragging supplies. Their armor was mismatched, dirty, brutal. No discipline, just thugs in uniform, and among them, a large black wagon covered with chains. Prisoners. He squinted. No, not prisoners, wolves, dead wolves. Stark banners taken from fallen men, tied up like trophies. Joffrey's fists clenched, he turned and ran. By nightfall the snow was relentless. His horse was struggling, hooves slipping on the ice. But the campfires of the Stark army finally came into view, like stars breaking through the storm. Joffrey burst into the camp, mud splattered, voice hoarse. "They're 2 hours behind, maybe less. 200 strong, flanking from the east." The guards didn't move at first, stunned to see him alive. Then chaos erupted. Robb stormed out of his tent, half-dressed, sword at his side. "What did you see?" "They've taken fallen Stark banners," Joffrey said quickly, breathless. "Mocking you?" "Dragging them like spoils. They march fast, but their formation's a mess." Robb's jaw tightened. "Good." He turned to his commanders. "Ready the archers. Burn the dead. We strike before they reach the ridge." One of the older officers stepped forward. "And him?" Robb looked at Joffrey. "He rides with us." Murmurs rippled through the camp. But no one dared argue. Joffrey nodded, throat dry. He didn't ask for armor. He didn't ask for a sword. He just followed. The ambush was swift and brutal. Robb led the attack like a ghost in the snow, silent and deadly. Joffrey rode behind the front lines, relaying signals, watching men die for a cause he never understood, but now respected. Steel clashed, arrows flew. The Bolton men, drunk and arrogant, never saw it coming. Joffrey saw a soldier charging at Robb from the side and screamed, "Behind you!" Robb spun and drove his sword through the man's chest. Later, as they regrouped by torchlight, Robb looked at Joffrey and simply said, "You saved my life." Joffrey said nothing, snow melting on his bloodied face. Then something strange happened. A Stark soldier walked up and clapped Joffrey on the shoulder. "Didn't think you had it in you, boy." Another nodded. "You ride better than half the lads." And for the first time in his life, Joffrey Baratheon felt something he never had before. Not fear, not power, respect. That night, he didn't sleep with the pigs. He was given a bedroll near the fire, a clean blanket, and hot soup without spit in it. As he stared at the flames, Robb approached. "You earned your place today," he said. Joffrey looked up. "What does that mean?" "It means you're no longer just a prisoner." A pause. "But you're not forgiven either." "I don't want forgiveness," Joffrey said quietly. "Just a chance to be better." Robb stared at him, then nodded once and walked away. Joffrey sat there alone, snow falling around him, steam rising from his bowl of soup. The boy king was gone. In his place sat a ghost, a boy with no crown, no name, and maybe, just maybe, a soul worth saving. By the time the snow thawed, John Rivers had become part of the camp, not truly accepted, not truly trusted, but no longer feared or hated like before. Joffrey had learned the rhythm of the Northern Army, how to ride in silence, how to sharpen a blade properly, how to stay warm in the night with only a fire, a wet blanket, and a few curses whispered to the sky. Every lesson came with bruises and mockery, but he took it, all of it. He didn't flinch when Arya trained with her blade nearby, didn't blink when Catelyn passed him without a glance, and he didn't speak of his old life, not once, but the past has sharp teeth, and it always finds a way to bite. It happened in a tavern. They had entered a small northern village after another minor skirmish, and Robb allowed his men a night of rest. The ale flowed freely, the music returned, and the tired soldiers found laughter again. Even Joffrey was allowed in. Just another muddy rider with a bruised face and torn gloves. He sat in the corner, sipping slowly, listening to the laughter and the singing, and then he heard the name, Joffrey Baratheon. The sound of it cut through the room like a sword through silk. He looked up sharply. A man by the fire was talking loud, drunk, waving a cup around. "They say he died like a coward," the man said. "Ran off into the woods like a little girl. Probably eaten by wolves or his own guilt," laughter followed. "Wish I'd killed the bastard myself." Joffrey stared into his cup. Not because he disagreed, but because it hurt more than he expected. Then the worst thing happened. The drunk turned his head. "Hey, you!" he shouted toward Joffrey. "You're from the south, aren't you? You knew the little king, didn't you? Tell us, was he as pathetic as they say?" Joffrey looked up, face calm. "Worse," the man burst into laughter again. "Ha! That's what I like to hear." But the moment passed, and Joffrey left the tavern quietly, heart pounding like a war drum. Outside, snow crunched under his boots. He walked into the woods, past the fires, past the tents, needing air, needing space, needing... Why didn't you slit his throat? Arya's voice came from behind him. He turned slowly. She was leaning against a tree, sword sheathed, arms crossed. "You heard it," she said. "He was mocking you. The old you, the one who killed my father. And you just sat there," Joffrey shrugged. "Because killing him would have made me that person again." Arya stepped closer. "So now what? You just hide behind a fake name forever?" "Names are just chains," Joffrey said quietly. "Mine was heavy. King, Baratheon, Your Grace. All of them were lies. Maybe it's better I don't wear any name at all." She looked at him long and, "You can't undo what you did," she said. "I know. You can't. Bring my father back." "No, you can't ever be one of us," Joffrey nodded. "I know that too." Arya tilted her head. "Then why keep trying?" He sighed. "Because if I stop, I become him again. And I don't want to be him anymore." She stared at him for a long time. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back toward the camp. And for the first time since Ned Stark's death, Joffrey felt something strange in his chest. Not shame, not grief, but peace. A few days later, a raven arrived from the south. Robb read it in silence, face pale, then handed it to his mother. Catelyn's eyes narrowed as she read it aloud to the inner circle. Queen Regent Cersei Lannister demands the return of her son, Joffrey Baratheon, alive and unharmed. In return, she offers peace, safe passage, and the full withdrawal of Lannister forces from the Riverlands. Silence fell, then chaos erupted. "She's lying. She'll kill us all. We should hang him tonight. He's a Lannister prince, not one of us." Robb raised a hand, quieting the noise, then looked toward Joffrey, or John Rivers, as he was now. "Do you want to go back?" Robb asked. Joffrey's voice was steady. "I'd rather die than be her puppet again." Catelyn stared at him. "She will kill thousands to get you back." "I know," Robb turned to his council. "Then we don't send him back." Gasps followed. "But the peace—" "There is no peace with Cersei," Robb growled. "Only delay." He looked at Joffrey again. "You're not a hostage anymore. You're not a king. But you're not nothing either." And in that moment something changed in the air. A line was crossed, a decision made. The war would go on. But the boy once known as Joffrey Baratheon was no longer running. The days after the Raven's arrival were filled with whispers. The Queen Regent had offered peace. Real peace, or so it seemed. Troop withdrawals, trade promises, even hostages exchanged. All for one thing, the return of Joffrey Baratheon. But Robb Stark had made his decision. The council had fought it. Arya had threatened to kill Joffrey herself if he ever even thought about going back. But still, Robb stood firm. "We don't bargain with snakes," he said. "And we don't trade blood for lies." Joffrey didn't sleep for 2 nights. Not because he was afraid, but because for the first time in his life, people were fighting over whether he deserved to live, and most of them were against it. But he stayed, worked, trained, fought alongside the men during minor raids. He earned bruises honestly now. Scars too, and slowly. Something unexpected happened. A few of the soldiers stopped spitting when he passed. One gave him a boiled potato with another taught him how to properly hold a shield. They didn't call him Your Grace. They didn't even call him Joffrey. He was just John, the southern boy who didn't complain, who rode hard, who took a beating and stood back up. But peace has no place in war, and war has no place for ghosts. It was dawn when the Lannister riders arrived, 200 strong, red and gold cloaks shining in the morning sun. They didn't come to fight, not yet. They came to speak. Their leader rode forward waving a white banner. "I carry the words of the Queen Regent," the man said loudly at the edge of the northern camp. "We offer you peace." Roads reopened. Trade resumed. The Riverlands restored. "All we ask is the return of the rightful king." Robb stood at the front, sword strapped to his hip, eyes fixed on the man. "You mean the coward who ran from his own throne?" The messenger kept his voice level. "We mean Joffrey Baratheon, first of his name, true-born heir of Robert and blood of House Lannister." Robb turned. Joffrey stood behind him silent. "Do you have anything to say?" Robb asked him. Joffrey stepped forward. He removed his gloves, pulled up his sleeve, revealed the scars on his palms from the forge, then lifted his head, voice calm. "I am not a king. I am not Baratheon. "And I am not yours to command," the Lannister messenger sneered. "Your mother will burn the Riverlands to the ground." "She already did," Joffrey replied. "And I helped her." "I won't do it again," Robb stepped forward. "You can leave in peace, or die with your lies." The man spat in the snow, turned, and rode off. Everyone knew what that meant. War would return. That night, Robb and Joffrey sat alone in the command tent, a bottle of strong northern liquor between them. "You could have gone," Robb said. "I thought about it," Joffrey admitted. "But if I did, I'd never come back. Not just to the north. I'd never come back to myself." Robb poured another cup. "You're a strange one, John Rivers. I was a stranger to myself for years." Robb gave a dry smile. "You're not one of us. You never will be. But you've earned something here. I don't know what to call it yet, but it's real." Joffrey looked into the fire. "That's more than I ever had before. The Lannisters attacked at dusk 3 days later. A full assault. Siege weapons, archers, sellswords. The sky turned black with smoke and steel. The North fought like wolves." Joffrey rode into the chaos with no sigil. On his chest, only a dagger in his hand and fury in his heart. He moved like a ghost, cutting down soldiers who once swore loyalty to his mother. He saw their faces, their eyes. Some even recognized him, but none could stop him. Hours later, the battlefield was soaked in blood. But the Lannisters had been pushed back, and barely. Robb found Joffrey near the edge of a trench, hands shaking, face spattered with blood. "You all right?" Robb asked. Joffrey nodded. "No, but I will be." Weeks passed. The Queen Regent's army retreated. Her peace offers turned to silence, and slowly, the war began to change. Whispers spread across Westeros, not of kings or dragons, but of a Lannister boy who vanished into the north and returned a different man. A man with no name, no crown, only purpose. One evening Robb summoned him. "You've served with us for a year," Robb said. "Fought harder than most. Bled for this cause. What do you want?" Joffrey thought long and hard. "I want to bury him." "Who?" "The king I used to be." Robb understood. He nodded toward the hill. "Then dig." At sunset, Joffrey stood on the hill overlooking the battlefield. Snow falling soft. He held a small wooden box. Inside it, a golden crown, tarnished, bent, useless. He dug into the frozen earth with his hands. No speech. No prayers, just silence. Then he placed the crown into the hole, covered it, and stood, a grave with no name. No stone, only snow and peace.